Hey there. Welcome to the Postgame Pint. John Bonus of Twins Daily. With me, Nick Nelson of Twins Daily. Also, Seth Stows of Twins Daily. I'm going to try and center our heads on the middle of these things. Twins just defeat the Tigers with the final score. 6-2, something like that? I honestly don't know.
6-2. Thanks to Buxton.
That's right.
6-2.
6-2. Thanks to Buxton. Before we get started, I guess I should probably do this throughout this because not everybody joins right away. But, there is in Periscope or YouTube or Facebook Live, wherever you're watching this, there's some place that you can put comments. We'd like you to use that because that gives us our topics and our questions for the game. So we encourage you to go ahead and do that. If you want to just test it out, you can tell me what your post-game pint is if you had. I've got a Party Forward from Fair State today, which is the beer I did not use the other day when my Mirror Universe won my poll. It's okay. It's a good IPA. It's not blowing me away. It's not no Mirror Universe, but it's good. Nick, are you having anything today, or are you still recovering from your anniversary yesterday?
Yeah, I had a little bit of a Sunday fun day yesterday, so I'm going to pass on the day drinking today. I'm actually having a Celsius energy drink to try to make sure I can bring it here in this post-game pint on a rainy Monday afternoon. Good.
How about you, Seth?
Well, as you know, I'm not going with an IPA today. Instead, I'm going with yet another TDP.
Good. Well, like Nick, the Twins brought it today. Particularly, Michael Pineda brought it today with 7 innings, 7 innings strong pitching. Let's take a look at the way the game went. I love taking a look at the Fangraphs information on this. Here is the win probability added. This kind of just shows what the percentage is of who is going to win the game. As closer it gets to the top, the more the Twins win. As closer it gets to the bottom, the better chance the Tigers are going to win. This was kind of a boring game. Pretty even up until the third inning. Twins scored about 4 runs, the big hit being the Eddie Rosario double, in which he ended up getting thrown out between second and third. We're going to talk about that in a second, I think. But at that point, the Twins were ahead at 87% chance of winning. They just kind of held on to it throughout the long rain delay. The heroes of the game, let's get this ad. Let's see, highest win probability added for the Twins. Michael Pineda, obviously, he was the story from a pitching standpoint. Stashek did a nice job in the 8th. Rogers ended up closing things out in the 9th. And then from a hitting standpoint, the leaders were, Eddie Rosario, obviously, with that double was probably the big blow. Let's see, anybody struggle? So Ryan Jeffers, obviously, with his home run was also a big blow. Gonzalez ended up struggling a little bit. Adrian didn't have a great game. And we want to take a look at the big plays that were the significant plays in the game. Start here. Eddie Rosario's double, Ryan Jeffers' home run, Ryan Jeffers' single that drove in a run, drove in Jake Cave, and then Brent Rooker with another one. So I think I kept saying Rosario's name throughout this description, and I have with me the two polar opposites of the Rosario fan club. So let me just throw the red meat into the ring. Let you cats go for it.
Go ahead, Seth. I mean, he was big today. He had a big game and was obviously instrumental in the victory.
So sure. I think for the last 3 years, about every other day, I tweet out, have I ever mentioned how much I love Eddie Rosario play baseball? And
you do it even during the off season.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, sometimes I do it after homers. Sometimes I do it after a play like that. Sometimes I do it after he throws a ball from left field inexplicably down the first baseline when he's trying to throw it to third base. It's entertaining. It's so much fun to watch. And sometimes it's absolutely terrible. Sometimes, like today, he comes up huge. And again, I think ultimately Nick and I probably have the same idea of what should happen with Eddie Rosario this offseason. But I fun to watch. I think ideally, if he weren't necessarily hitting 4th or 5th every game, but again, I mean, you can't argue with what he has done as a Twins and in a Twins uniform, put up great offensive numbers for a long time. You know, I always say it's like the facts of life. You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have Eddie Rosario.
Well, nice reference.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Nick. Why don't you respond? And by the way, I want people to respond in the comment section. Well, what their thoughts are on Eddie Rosario as well.
Yeah, you know, I would agree certainly that he's very fun to watch when he's going good. When some of the bold gambles pay off, you know, the big throws from the outfield, the timely hits, the clutch performances. I just think those are a little farther and fewer between these days. You know, and as I mentioned on Twitter, I think he ranks in like the bottom 25% of all players in WAR dating back to last year. Even the big hit today, it was not a thunderous, well-struck ball. I think the expected batting average on that grounder to first was like 160, and it hit off the base and turned into a big play. And then he ran himself into an out, you know, for the third time in like 2 days. He runs the bases like he's a fast player. I mean, with this aggressiveness, and then he gets thrown out by a mile. It's like, we want Buxton taking those risks, but we don't want you taking those risks, Eddie. And then also there was a couple. Granted, he was shading, I think, towards center because it was Candelario, the lefty. But those fly balls to left field should be caught. Those are very catchable balls for a left fielder with remotely good range. So I just think that, you know, the package on hold these days is just not doing it for me very much. And he seems to have this perception of himself like he's more athletic than he is, making some of these gambles. And I think the perception of him from the team, I mean, Rocco's still running him out there every day. He's not getting benched after making these gaffes in the field, and in fact, he's hitting cleanup against. I don't know. It's kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just to jump in to kind of moderate a little bit. I agree with you that in fact he's not the same player he was, or at least maybe he is kind of the same player he is, but he's not as cheap as he used to be. You know, you can be an average center, an average left fielder, or below average left fielder overall between your hitting and your defense and everything else. And that's fine for your first 4 years because you're making nothing for your first 3 years and you're still undervalued your fourth year. But now this is his fifth year, and next year would be his sixth year. And each of those years you end up getting a $3 or $4 million raise, and at some point it becomes too much. And so, Seth, you made reference to what you think the Twins are going to end up doing with Rosario next year, and you and Nick probably agreeing on it. Why don't you let us in? I presume what you're saying there is you probably would not bring back the guy that you love to watch.
I know I'm going to miss them a lot too, but I mean, we were saying the same thing last offseason, and I think our assumption is if they got a decent number 3 starter for Rosario, they would have done it in a second. He's going to make around $10 million next year, and you can replace him with Kirilloff or Larnach or Rooker or some combination of that, and you know, get fairly similar production, presumably, and use it. The assumption, of course, is that you're going to use the other $9.5 million on something else that will benefit the team. But I mean, ultimately, these are the types of decisions the front office has to make. And to me, it's an easy decision. At the same time, I know that RBIs and all that kind of stuff don't matter, but you don't just play 32 and 108 easily. So, I mean, I think we, in some senses, maybe even undervalue him to some degree. Well, when we all take a step back, we all see the same thing. So,
yeah, I mean, the stuff, the key point, the screw ups stand out. So do the crazy good plays. They stand out, right? The bigger and what we've just been talking about is sort of the average level of production, right? We're not taking into account the goofy plays when we say that. I don't know, Nick, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to mention that Seth mentioned the 32 home runs and 108 RBIs last year. I did look this up and saw the similarity yesterday that in 2004, Tony Batista had 32 home runs and 110 RBIs. And that
was a lot harder hitting environment than this one was.
And the next year he played in Japan, and then he came to the Twins, and we all know how that went.
Yeah. You mentioned that he tends to do base running moves as if he's super fast, and then he isn't super fast, right?
Hey, below average runner.
And then you also mentioned, you know, that's one of the things that is probably misleading in left field. You know, he's got the great arm, and he can occasionally throw it right out accurately with that great arm and throw people out. Make some, you know, fantastic plays. We saw it in Boston. We've seen it a couple times this year, right? But I do wonder if they are. You mentioned today a couple of different times, especially Candelario. hitting those, kind of pop flies, kind of whatever, to the left field corner. And, Rosario not being able to get there after not being able to get there yesterday. Now, I would say two things about that. The first, I'd say, when you got Buxton in center field, I don't know that Eddie has to be shading quite that far into center left. I could be wrong because I just trust Buxton so much out there. It could also be that he's over shading a little bit because he also overjudges his ability to get to the line on that kind of play. That maybe he's a little further off it than he should be. And then the other thing is to say, the other, and I'll use this to switch to the next topic. It sure seemed like the Tigers, when they were effective against Pineda, were effective going opposite field on him. That almost all of their big hits, it seemed, the batter was going opposite field, as if that was that became the plan of attack sometime around middle of the game. Which brings me to Michael Pineda. Suddenly we've got a third really good pitcher on this team, maybe a fourth really good pitcher on this team, depending on where you think Barrios is. Pineda right now, that was as many pitches that in his second outing with the Twins, he threw more pitches than anybody other than Kenta Maeda in his no-hit bid.
Yeah. I just want to say that today marks a big anniversary, a momentous milestone of an unforgettable moment. 1 year ago today, Michael Pineda's PED suspension was announced. And I remember that very well because when I heard about it, I was getting ready to walk down the aisle. It is also your wedding anniversary.
I remember, right, yeah.
His second start in a year, and he looked incredible. I thought he was so sharp. Once again, I think he had 14 swinging strikes today after 16 last time. That's really good. He's attacking the zone. He's very efficient, very effective. I mean, what more can you ask for? It's easy to forget that when the suspension came last year, he really was looking like a game one playoff starter. And granted, some other guys were struggling, but it wasn't just because of that. He was pitching incredibly well and super consistently. I mean, like you said, 7 innings today, which the Twins have gotten from one other starter all year long, and that was Kenta Maeda's no-hitter bid. And it's just business as usual for Pineda.
Yeah, there were a lot of questions when he came back as to whether or not, how he would come back, like just after a year off. You just don't really know, right? B, would he be the pitcher he was at the beginning of last year? Or C, would he be the pitcher he was at the end of last year? Because they were different guys. He's picked up right where he left off, Seth.
Yeah, I mean, what he's done these first two starts says a lot. First of all, it says that whatever plan they had for him going into summer camp 2 and leading into his first starts, I mean, it worked out great. They had him ready for 85, 90 pitches right away in his first start, and he went over 100 today. The thing that's so impressive is that he isn't just throwing strikes. He's throwing strikes on the corners, at the knees, and then he's getting strikeouts up in the strike zone, which is exactly how you map it out. I truly think, and maybe this is a segue to John's next topic, which we can talk about later, but I think Ryan Jeffers' ability to frame those pitches is really good. And, he's not even getting all the calls, and you can see he's getting a lot of close calls. But Pineda's darting down and in, down and away, and then the fastball up, mixing speeds. He's doing everything that you would hope. Like you said, last year he was their best pitcher at the time of the suspension, and he stepped in as if he didn't miss any time, which is absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, you mentioned, I agree. It's been a real shot in the arm to this rotation, and if you get him and Barrios him back and Barrios back on track, well, now you've got 4 very effective pitchers. I'm not counting Rich Hill yet, although give him a couple more starts. Odorizzi waiting in the wings, and we've got a question from Travis. Travis says, who's your not really a question. He's got his opinion. He says Maeda, Barrios, and Pineda are his opening series rotation, because let's not forget, for the playoffs this year, it's just a 3-game set versus whoever you're set up against. You got to take 2 out of 3 of them. So all you really care about for that first series is who are the top 3 starters you got in those series. I would love to hear who is your guys' top 3 starters right now in the Twins rotation.
Go ahead, Seth.
I mean, for me,
who's game 1 first of all, then game 2, game 3.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how it lines up, and they don't really have a lot of time left to really map it out. But for me, I'd pick Maeda, and number 2, I'd pick Pineda, And number 3, I'd go with Barrios, but I mean, then I'd feel bad for Dobnik because he certainly has earned it. So, I mean, you got to make choices, and I'm liking the opinion I'm seeing a little bit more on #Twins Twitter and stuff about the idea of Hill and Odorizzi kind of doing some sort of piggybacking. But I mean, at that point, you're talking about round 2 of the playoffs, and 1, let's get to the playoffs. 2, let's figure out what's going to be in a bubble, and 3, let's get through whoever that first round is. So they've got
Nick,
some tough choices.
Nick, are you in the same boat? Dobnik's on the outside looking in to the other 3?
Yeah, I think he has to be. I mean, just in terms of the experience, Dobnik looked really good up until the playoff game at Yankee Stadium last year, and then things fell apart a little bit. So I definitely like him in like long relief. He gives you a very different look. He's going to come in and pound the bottom of the zone, and a lot of it also might have to do with matchups. I mean, if you're facing a team where you need to keep the ball on the ground, maybe a uppercut home run team, Dobnik might be a little bit more of a palatable option than, I don't know, Barrios if he's on a little bit of a cold streak. A lot of it depends on how Barrios looks in these last 3 starts to me.
Yeah, the truth is I hate these questions, and even though I just asked it, and I picked it to be it because we've got 2-3 more weeks worth of data to get. It feels a very horse racy right now. Like, yeah, coming around the second bend, here's what the order is: 1, 2, and 3. But Dobnik has been closing fast in my mind. I feel like we have underestimated him all year, and the more he keeps having quality outings like this, and the more I kind of keep seeing opposing teams' reactions to his stuff, the more I kind of think maybe he's and maybe my opinion on him in the playoffs is colored a little bit by his outing last year, game 2 or game 3 versus the Yankees a little bit. And frankly, there is a pedigree that he doesn't have right now, and that makes a little bit of a difference. That maybe is the hat tip to those guys. Seth, you did mention Rich Hill. I will say this. I'm really excited. Whether Rich Hill is in my starting rotation or not in my starting rotation, and right now he's not. And in fact, he's not even in the top 4. Even he and whoever he's going to piggyback are not in my top 4. So it almost doesn't matter. I do love the idea of him being sort of a long relief guy that can come in, and just absolutely shut down a lineup at least one time through it, and maybe one and a couple times through it. Because I feel like what we have seen in every outing from him, even if he struggles at some point, he always gets through that lineup, that first time through the lineup, looking really clean. I mean, really impressive. And that sort of role in the playoffs can be a difference maker, especially if you have somebody like Baldelli as the manager, who's not afraid to yank the starter early as soon as he thinks there might be a sign of trouble. I could easily see him, in a close game going 3 1/3 with Barrios, and runners on first and third. He brings Duffy and gets out of the 4th, and then brings in Hill for innings 5, 6, 7 to try and get to the bridge to the high leverage relievers.
Well, it's an interesting different look. I mean, if Barrios is out there, to your point, there's been, I think one of the knocks on him maybe is that he overthrows a little bit in big spots. So if he's coming out there with the high velocity, throwing 95, 96, and Baldelli feels like the hitters are catching up to it, bring in Rich Hill to bring that 88-mile-an-hour fastball and that big slow hook, right? It's such a different look.
Yeah, I like that very much.
My thought is weird.
Good.
Because we were talking about that, you talk about how we all, and I shouldn't say we all, but many still wonder about how real Randy Dobnik is. And if he would have first or second round draft pick and a high prospect,
Right.
we would even question it. We'd be incredibly excited about it. So as a quote unquote prospect guy, there are certain biases that go for a player if you're a high draft pick or you're a big money national signing that unfortunately for Dobnik, he doesn't have. And that has, I think, probably got exasperated with the whole Uber thing, with a New York start. And I'd say this, the Twins went out in the front office and they decided we need starting. They brought back Odorizzi and Pineda. They kept Barrios. They kept Dobnik, Smeltzer, and Thorpe. They still went out and got Hill and Bailey. And right now we're talking about 4 guys that we feel really good about going into a 3-game series with 2 other guys that have been all-stars or strong playoff performers as early as last year, as recently as last year. So, I mean, it's kind of like, the depth is there. and it's going to create some tough decisions. That means it's probably going to create a lot of second guessing no matter which way they go. But, I mean, they've got some good options, even though, Thorpe hasn't done what we all hoped he would do, and Smeltzer just got sent down, and Haley and Odorizzi have pretty much missed most of the year, and Pineda was out most of the year. So they're lucky to have Dobnik, and they're lucky to have Maeda at this point, even though it costs giving up a top prospect in Gratterall. So I know that was a little long-winded, but
no, that's fine. So I mean, you just talked a little bit about how a prospect kind of has overachieved. I mean, the truth is that he really came out of nowhere. It's the one person I'm going to bring up is somebody who was a legitimate prospect, but also I think the perception is he's overachieved. We saw Ryan Jeffers hit his first home run for the year, and I mean, there's been so much focus on Ryan Jeffers' defense and on his ability to frame pitches and to catch strikes. There was something I got to tell you guys, 15, 20 years ago, I would never have dreamed that on Fox Sports North, I would see a comparison of catchers' ERAs. But sure enough, when Jeffers starts taking, I think it was probably after his home run, or maybe it was before his home run in the first or second inning, they're showing catchers' ERAs. So just real quickly on catchers' ERAs, that is a topic, a sabermetric topic from 20-some years ago. It is, in general, something that sabermetricians kind of like, but don't really like, because there's just so much correlation basis in it. A lot of catchers, specifically Greg Maddux had a personal catcher, right? So that catcher's ERA is really good, right? It's hard to do any sort of, it's not unvaluable in specific instances, but it's something that you don't want to pay too much attention to overall as a sabermetrician, just because there's a lot of noise involved in that. But they did show, in fact, the catchers' ERAs for the Twins, and given the fact that there aren't really personal catchers on the Twins, that they're all kind of working back and forth, it is somewhat interesting that Ryan Jeffers is about a run lower than anybody else is on the staff, or maybe 2 runs lower than some other staff. I think it was 2, 3, and 4 ERAs basically for them. And that matches the eye test, right? That he's, in fact, doing well defensively. But what we forget is that he wasn't drafted as a fielding catcher. He was drafted as a hitter, and we saw that today.
Yes.
Go ahead, Seth.
I was going to say yes and no. The Twins and their scouting staff fully believes that they saw that he could be a good catcher. He'd never worked with anyone, and they fully believe that he could frame. There just wasn't really any of those numbers at UNCW when he played there. They saw something that they believed in, whereas most of the scouting industry just saw his hitting numbers. I'd also say that I think on watching Sunday's game, we understand now why they went to Jeffers. They needed a regular catcher rather than Williams Astudillo, and I'm wondering why Astudillo needs to be in the major leagues, but other than as the 4th catcher in an organization. But I mean, it's just night and day difference between watching Astudillo yesterday, watching Jeffers today. And let's be honest, he hadn't hit for any home runs or any power, even an extra base hit until today. But I think that home run today to dead center at 112 miles per hour tells you the power potential that he has. And it
113 miles per hour. Unbelievable, the exit velocity on that thing. We did get a question regarding catching, whether or not Mitch Garver will be back this year. What I can tell you about that is in every conference call so far to this point, they seem to express confidence that Mitch Garver was going to be back this year. We did see on Fox Sports North today Mitch Garver participating in baseball activities today. He was catching the ball. Apparently, I think he took some swings in the batting cage. So, there's something going on there. And then even the Twins announcers, however, Justin Morneau in particular, sort of questioned, it's possible he's back by the end of the season. Is he going to be ready by the end of the season? Like, will he have had enough game time to really be prepared for that? We could very well be going into the postseason with Ryan Jeffers as one of our top 9 guys in the lineup.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, if Garver makes it back with like a week left in the season, who's going to be, and he has an okay final week, who's going to be starting a catcher in game 1 of the playoffs? I would not assume it's going to be Garver. Jeffers is building up a lot of trust right now. I think Seth's point is very valid. I am a Tortuga fan, but there is no denying that it is a night and day difference in terms of receiving and running the ball game when Jeffers is out there. That was a statement, that home run. I'm someone who's been a little skeptical not of his offensive potential, but just whether he's really ready to be a asset at the plate in the majors. But that thing was crushed. And he's had a lot of really good at-bats. He's had a lot of good at-bats for someone who came up without I don't think even any experience at AAA. Obviously, no ability to play in the minors this year. And I've been really impressed with the at-bats from Brent Rooker, too, on that note. I think it gives you confidence that these guys can come over from the alternate site and not be totally overwhelmed by major league competition, which sparks some other interesting questions as far as some of the guys over there.
Yeah, the regular season. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Seth.
I just wanted to add, I thought after he hit the long home run, I was just as impressed with Jeffers' next at bat, where they had a runner on second and 2 outs, hit a solid single to right field, which tells you the advanced approach, the willingness that he doesn't have to hit a home run every time. And Nick brought it up, the Rooker hit to right field with a runner in scoring position with 2 strikes. I've been really impressed with Rooker too, because there are strikeout concerns, but so far, yeah, he's struck out a couple of times, but every at bat has been at least competitive. He's had some 106, 112 mile an hour exit velocities too. He's going to hit a lot of home runs in the big leagues.
Yeah, the playoffs end, or the regular season ends 3 weeks from yesterday. Which means the playoffs probably start potentially 3 weeks from tomorrow. It'll be interesting to see if Garver can get back, if Jeffers, how we feel about Jeffers hitting and adjusting. Nick, I had the same concern as you did, which is I was worried that I'm not worried long-term about Jeffers' bat. I'm worried about whether or not he can adjust to major league pitching in the short time that he has in the 60-game season. And I said, you brought up Brent Rooker, so I just wanted to take a look at the lineup. That was one of the things that I noticed about the lineup. There's a lot of unusual things about today's lineup, which can happen on the last game of the series. It can happen the day before a doubleheader. It can happen at the end of a 4-game series. It can happen on Labor Day, right? Especially when there's not fans in the stands. My guess is if there's fans in the stands, you're maybe trying to, at a full house, you're maybe trying to trot out sort of your top people. But none of that exists today. And what we saw today was Brent Rooker hitting third in this lineup. You're basically replacing Cruz, and not having a bad day overall. I also Lamont Wade Jr. replacing Sano at first base is pretty clear. I'm gonna chalk up Sano and Polanco both being out to basically Rocco deciding at some point, with 7 games in 5 days and a doubleheader coming up tomorrow and a couple of off days afterwards, he was going to get almost everybody a day off at some point during this Tiger series. We certainly saw it yesterday, and I think today it was Polanco and Sano's turn. I hope that's what happened, because throwing Lamont Wade Jr. in at first base, although he did play first base in college, he did not play it once in the minor leagues since 2015. He did not play it once. He didn't play it once last. He didn't. No, exactly. He made a great scoop, and he did play it once last year in the majors. By the way, they did throw him out there. So I didn't look up what day that was. I don't know if that was the hangover day after the conference win or what that was exactly.
Yep.
Was that what it was?
Yep.
I love that. My favorite lineup of the year is always the day after they clinch the division or clinch the playoffs.
The hangover game,
The hangover game, right? But yeah, that worried me a little bit that they didn't have a better option than that. It also, I thought maybe Marwin Gonzalez was there, but Marwin Gonzalez was in there at second base, and that's presumably because Luis Ariz is still struggling with the knee injury or wasn't ready to go or something. I don't know exactly, right? And then what was the other odd thing about
John,
the
look
lineup?
at this. Consider this. First of all, I don't think Rocco Baldelli cares if there's fans in the stands or not. He's going to go plan, and he's not going to sidestep from it unless he absolutely has to. He basically said in the pregame presser, Polanco has been sore for days, but because of other guys being out, he just had to keep playing. So he said today was the day. It is interesting as far as Rooker hitting. He hit 7th in his first game. Since then, he's hit 4th, 5th, and now 3rd. And he's had a hit in every game. That tells you exactly what you feel.
Wow.
It tells you exactly what the team feels about his bat. Now, it also tells you how they feel about his running and about his defense. The pinch ran for him in the 5th inning, which actually, as you think about it, makes sense on Sunday. And today, Wade that they went with at first base instead of Rooker, even though Rooker has played some first base. To me, I think there's some matchup things there. Like, again, you may or may not pinch run for Rooker later, and you'd rather not have to. The reality is they wanted Wade in the lineup today, and not because of the at-bats that he takes, and he's earned that, and he had a great day again today.
But you make a great point, Seth, that they wanted Rooker in the lineup, they wanted Wade in the lineup, but they put Rooker at DH and they put Wade, who never played first base, at first base.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it shows, I think Rooker's going to be a little bit of a defensive liability wherever he is. I mean, the guy's built to be a DH pretty much, which is where he was today. And that could be his long-term role with, Cruz's age and the fact that he's going to be a free agent after this year.
I will just kind of call out as well. We had Nelson Cruz out of the lineup for the second days in a row, and I wouldn't be worried about that necessarily, except that he was also scratched out of the lineup yesterday. Now, once he was scratched, Baldelli was asked about that in the pregame, or it was the pregame, I think. And he said, no, basically it's just a day off, etc. But then the question is, well, then why was he in the lineup in the first place? Why did he end up being scratched? And now he's out a second day in a row. I will be surprised if he plays in both games tomorrow. I will be also a little surprised if he doesn't play in at least one. But if he doesn't play in one, well, then I'm going to start getting a little concerned. I suppose it's possible they want to give him 5 days off in a row, but that doesn't sound right. Right? That doesn't sound like – that's not something you want to do to one of your best hitters, not just because he wouldn't be productive, but because you don't want him to fall out of practice. You know what I mean? You don't want him to get cold. I don't know. I would ask you guys, are you concerned about Cruz at all? But I don't know whether to be concerned or not either. I'm going to be interested to see what happens tomorrow.
I bet Cruz and Sano are both play all 14 innings tomorrow. I mean, with 2 days off, the fact that Cruz has had 2 days off, and I don't think Sano is really injured. I think he might have a small hamstring tweak or something. But just with having those 2 days off, which is an interesting dynamic because huge series coming up at home in next weekend with Cleveland coming to town, and Cleveland is in the middle of a 10 games in 10 days. This is the tail end of that. So the Twins are going to have home field advantage and a pretty big advantage in terms of being able to rest up, which is nice.
Unfortunately, they get Bieber on Friday night.
Well, of course we do. How does he always line up for the first game of the series versus us?
It's like they're building their whole schedule around it. Yeah,
it's not just that he ends up pitching us against us in the series. It's he ends up facing us the first game of the series every time. All right, let me share my screen one more time here.
All this lineup stuff, and you talk about the guys that got days. I expect Cruz will play at least one of the two yet tomorrow. Blanco, Sano, they'll play the whole thing. I fully expect Donaldson and Buxton to each play one, like they did on Friday in the doubleheader, and I think that's wise. I think it's as long. I mean, start with the B lineup on Sunday. They're going to, guys off, and they need to do that. They're going to take care of Donaldson and Buxton because we've seen the impact this weekend that both have had. They're going to do everything they can to make sure those guys are ready to go for the playoffs.
Fair point. Just to update the standings here, the Twins won today. I don't think Cleveland and the White Sox have played yet. Is that right, guys? I don't think they've played yet. So Twins are now within a game of the White Sox, half a game of Cleveland. Right. Pretty soon those two teams are going to be playing each other as well. If you take a look at the Twins schedule here in the next let's take a quick look at the standings here. So overall we've got Tampa Bay at 28-13. They're by far the best team in the American League right now. They've got the number 1 spot. Oakland's got the number 2 spot. White Sox, by virtue of leading in the division, have the number 3 spot. Cleveland and Minnesota have the 4th and 5th best spots, or 4th and 5th best records. Toronto and New York Yankees are the last 2 teams into the playoffs right now. They're the 7th and 8th teams in the playoffs. Houston and the New York Yankees are the last 2 teams into the playoffs. And in fact, they're tied for the 7th and 8th spot, with Baltimore just 2 games back of them and Detroit now 2.5 games back of them. So as you mentioned, we've got a doubleheader tomorrow. The post-game Pint will be starting probably about 8 o'clock. I think we've got scheduled. It's going to start whenever the last doubleheader ends, or at 8 o'clock, whichever comes first is what we will do. Then the Twins have a 2-game break after that, and then they start a 3-game series versus Cleveland, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The Friday and Saturday games are at 7 o'clock, so the postgame Pint will be no later than 10 o'clock. And then the Sunday game is a 3 o'clock start because the Vikings play from noon to 3. So the Twins game starts at like 3:15, something like that. We'll probably put the postgame Pint at like 6 o'clock on Sunday. We will be having a Sunday postgame Pint this time around, I think. And then after that, the Twins have 7 more games on the road, all in Chicago, 4 versus the White Sox and 3 versus the Cubs. It's going to be their toughest stretch of the remaining part of the season, and will likely decide the AL Central. So for all those people wondering why people are resting now, they're resting now because the push begins on Friday. 3 games versus Cleveland, 4 games versus the White Sox, and then you got to face off against the Cubs, who are doing well in the NL Central. Immediately following that, before you head into the last week, where they've got a couple of off days in Detroit and Cincinnati to sort of round out the year. Guys, anything else that I missed that you really should talk about?
The Twins are now 80-33, dating back to the start of last year in games where Byron Buxton plays, compared to 47-45 in games where he doesn't. What an unbelievable difference maker. Hit a big home run today, which was awesome to see, adding an insurance run. Love watching this guy play. I thought it was a really fun dynamic today. It seemed like it was kind of the B lineup, but they had Donaldson and Buxton in there. So it's like the leaders and then some of the kids and some of the backups getting a chance. And those backups shined. We talked about Wade looking good at first base, made a huge scoop. We talked about Jeffers and Rooker having big hits. Jake Cave also. Let's talk about that catch in right field. That was phenomenal down the line. So just as much as this,
he would have been
as
in
much
my
as
lap.
this second tier of the roster, I know this is something we've talked about, John, has really struggled, and that's been kind of a huge aspect of the team's shortcomings this year. I wrote in the Week in Review today about Adrianza and Gonzalez have been terrible. They've been like zeros, offensively. So to see some of these backups and non-regulars get in there and do some good things, I think is really important and a big positive.
For me, I guess my last thought would probably be the bullpen. Cody Stashak came back today with Devin Smeltzer going down. Zach Littell was activated yesterday and optioned. And you look at the roster as it's set right now, and you think about those starters. Some of them may have to go to the bullpen. This bullpen is solid even after yesterday, and that's kind of a one day that went terrible. But you look at, they've got some tough decisions to make at the end of the bullpen. And, getting Stashak back, I still think Littell has a big time future. This bullpen is good. And like with the starting staff that we talked about, I think there's going to be some tough playoff decisions to make on who's in, who's left out, how a 28-man roster is set. And I wanted to add to Nick's comment about Gonzalez and Adrianza and their complete lack of offense this year. Can't disagree with that, but they've both been so valuable defensively. And as much as I love watching Eddie Rosario play baseball, I love watching Ray Adrianza play third base or shortstop anywhere on the left side of the field, because I think he's incredible.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point about sort of the roster, what the roster composition is going to look like the postseason. I, to be honest with you, I haven't given that much thought about it. Stashak coming back is actually a pretty huge addition to that bullpen. He was really good for a while before he ended up getting knocked around, and I think that tainted our view of him. But then we found out that he was hurt. That was part of what was going on. And not only is it going to be difficult because there's a lot of quality arms in that bullpen, it's going to be difficult because generally you don't carry that many arms into the postseason. You start loading up the bench bats because you might want to use them, although it's not totally clear to me that they mean that they need that many bench bats either. It'll be interesting to see if they end up trying to, find a pinch runner somewhere in the organization or something like that they want to end up trying to fit onto that roster. Some specialty players for the bench because they feel like they've got enough depth to handle the limited innings that are required by pitching in the postseason. So.
Yeah, speed is the one thing I would be looking for to add to the bench. In a 3-game postseason series or even a 5-game series, there's only so many innings to go around for the pitching staff, right? So it's like to Seth's point, how are Matt Whistler and Caleb Thielbar, who have absolutely earned the opportunity, and now Stashak too, coming back from missing some time, how are they going to be even on the roster? Are they going to have roles? Where are they going to fit into that pecking order? So that's going to be interesting. Or, would you look for someone like, I think last year it was Ian Miller, look for someone who can run. I think that's the one thing that's really missing. When the Twins are using Ray Adrians as a pinch runner, that's not good. I mean, he's not fast. So
Wade's not fast. You mentioned Eddie Rosario's below average speed wise. You've got Buxton right now that has any speed. Marwin Gonzalez is slow. Donaldson
slow as it gets.
Well, we already had
Rooker's not fast. Jeffers not fast. Aaron White might be the only option.
Well, that's what I was going to say. We've already had Aaron Whitefield on the roster. I wouldn't be shocked to see him placed into that role.
He's not even in the 60-man right now.
Is he not on the 60-man? That's what I was going to ask. And it seems like if you're going to put him in that role, you got to maybe get him some reps on the base paths. You know what I mean? Whether it's a field or maybe especially in the major leagues before you get that. We haven't seen that at all. Okay. No, that's a good thing to watch. There probably is a race going on in the bullpen to see who gets the limited number of spots that you really need for the postseason that we haven't really focused on yet. And that might be something that I'll be interested in seeing what happens there. So, all right. Everybody, thank you very much for joining the Postgame Pint. We went a little bit longer than we usually do, but we had a lot to talk about. It was a fun game. We will be back tomorrow night, probably around 8 o'clock after the doubleheader versus the St. Louis Cardinals. Then we'll have a couple days off before we get back to the big 3-game series versus Cleveland. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you very much for Nick Nelson and Seth Stoves for finding time to come join us. Thank you to everybody who included questions and such in the comments, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Go Twins!
Twins.